I will give demo on SQL language. Okay. Today I will give demo on SQL language. Listen here. To learn any concept very easily, just think about three words. One, why. Second one, word, what. Second word is what, and third word is how. Why you learn that particular concept. What is that particular concept? How to implement it. Okay. If you know the answer for these three questions, you will learn anything. C, C++, Java, SQL, whatever it may be. Just you will find out answer for these three questions. Okay, fine. Before going to start our topic, first of all, I will explain the topics which will be covered during our course. Okay. So I am going to show you the content that is covered in our course. Institute classes, the apps, SQL course content. So these are the concepts covered by me during our course. What is the need of DBMS, normalization, forms of normalizations, and all these topics will be covered. Okay, as the part of our course. So your course duration will be 5 weeks. Okay, fine. Right. Now I will start the topic introduction to SQL. Listen here. To learn any concept, basics are very important. Okay. Without knowing alphabets, it is not possible to talk in English and to write in English. Am I right? Respond. Say yes or no quickly. Right. Basics are very important. Without basics, it is not possible to learn any concept deeply. Okay. So that's why I am starting from scratch level. So at the end of the session, you will get the idea. What is SQL? What is the need of learning SQL? Why it is useful for us? You will get 101% clarity on SQL language. Okay. Right. Now I will start. Listen carefully. Listen here. Computer. Computer consists of two types of memory. One is temporary memory. Temporary memory. Computer consists how many types of memory? Two types of memory. One is temporary memory and another one is permanent memory. Permanent memory. The example for temporary memory is RAM. The example for permanent memory is hard disk. Hard disk. Sir, what is the difference between temporary memory and permanent memory? It's very simple. If you store your data, in temporary memory, then you are not able to use the data in future. Okay. If you store your data, very simple. If you store your data, in temporary memory location, then it is not possible to use the data in future. Temporary memory location, you cannot use the data. You cannot use that data in future. Okay. If you store your data in permanent memory location, then you are able to use the data in future also. Am I right? If you store your data in permanent memory location, you are able to use the data in future also. You can use the data in future also. That is the difference. Okay. Once again, I am repeating. Computer consists of two types of memory: temporary memory, permanent memory. The example for temporary memory is RAM. The example for permanent memory is hard disk. If you store your data in RAM, means temporary memory location, you cannot use that data in future. Okay? If you store your data in permanent memory locations, in the sense hard disk, then you can use that data in future. Now, I am going to explain two terminologies. One is variable and another one is file. Okay? I think you people already aware about variable and file. So, sir, what is variable? It's very simple. It is a memory location. Variable is a memory location or storage location. What is the use of variable? Variable is a memory location or storage location. It is used to store data. It is used to store data. Okay. If you want to store data, then you will use variable. Remember one thing, all variables are created in RAM. If you are trying to create a variable, that variable is created inside which memory? RAM memory, means temporary memory location. All variables are created inside the RAM. Inside the RAM. Okay? Okay, fine. Now, file. What is file? File is also a memory location or storage location, which is also used to store data. Okay? But all files are created in hard disk. All files are created inside the hard disk. If you are trying to create a file, then that file will be created inside the hard disk. Okay? Now, tell me what is the difference between variable and file? Variable is a memory location. File is also a memory location. Variable is used to store the data. File is also used to store the data. Then what is the difference? First difference, variables are created inside the RAM. So where all variables are temporary memory locations. Okay. Files are created inside the hard disk. So files are the permanent memory locations. It's very simple. Here I am giving conclusion. If you store your data, you store your program data or your application data. Okay, you store your program data in the variables that will be lost. Why? Because they are created inside the RAM is nothing but temporary memory location. Lost after execution, after your program execution is completed. After your program execution is completed. Okay. If you store your program data inside the file, then that data will not be lost. If you store your program data inside the file, then that data will not be lost. Will not be lost after your program execution is completed. So what is the benefit? So you can use that file data. You can use that data in multiple times in multiple applications. Okay, in multiple times in multiple applications. So you can use that data multiple times in multiple applications. Okay, so this is about file and variable. Now you people tell me, suppose my requirement is I want to store my data temporarily, then I will go with what? Respond in the chat box. Suppose my requirement is I want to store my data inside the temporary memory location. Okay, I don't want to use that data in future, then we will go with variable. Very good, wonderful, Shreyas. Suppose my requirement is I want to store my data permanently and I want to use it in future also, then I will go with file. So which is recommended? Storing data is permanently is recommended or storing data temporarily is recommended? So Always storing data permanently is recommended. Am I right? So for that we will use files, but there are some limitations with files. Okay, but there are some drawbacks, or there are some limitations with files. Sir, what are those? What are those? It's very simple. The first limitation with file is files files cannot files cannot files cannot store files cannot store large amount of data. If you want to store huge amount of data, then it is not possible to store that data inside the file. Okay, that is the first limitation. And the second limitation is no query language support. No query language support for files. Here one bigger question is generated in our brain. Sir, what is query language? Don't bother about that particular word. At the end of the session, you will get the clarity about what is query language. But here you notice one point. Files 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 are not supported by any query language. Okay, there is no query language support for files. Okay, keep the doubt in your brain. That will be going to clear at the end of the session. What is the doubt? What is query language? Okay. Now my requirement is I want to merge data of two files. I want to combine data of two files. It is possible, but it is very difficult. Okay, merging two files data is very complex, very complex process. Very complex process. Okay. Now another drawback. Another drawback is I want to search for something inside the file. I want to retrieve required data from the file. Is possible, but it is very complex process. Okay, searching and retrieving, required data, from the file is complex process. So these are the some limitations with files. Okay, come on. What are the limitations with files? Files cannot store huge amount of data or large amount of data. There is no query language support for files. I want to combine content or data of the two files. It is possible, but it is very difficult process or complex process. Suppose I want to search some specific data from your file. I want to retrieve that particular data from your file. Possible, but it is difficult. So these are the some of the limitations with files. Sir, then what is the solution? So the solution is the solution the solution is database. What is the solution? Database. So immediately question generated in our brain. Sir, what is database? It's very simple. Database. Now I am going to explain about what? Database. Database. Sir, what is database? Database is a software. Database is a software. What is the use of database software? Which is used to store our data. In computer hard disk. Permanently. Okay, database is a software which is used to store our data where in computer hard disk permanently, and also allows us anyone can store something for using it in future. Am I right? To perform some operations. Am I right? So and also allows us to perform operations to perform operations on that data. Okay, database is a software which is used to store our data in computer hard disk and also allows us to perform operations on that data. Listen here, the operations performed, the operations which are performed on the data of database software, on the data of database software are called as CURD operations. Which operations? CURD operations. Immediately one bigger question is generated in our brain. Sir, what is CURD? Okay, don't worry. Just at this point, you just remember the operations which are performed on the database data are called as CURD operations. Okay. At the end of the session, you will get clarity about what is CURD. Okay. Now, I am going to tell about another terminology that is nothing but RDBMS. RDBMS. Sir, what is RDBMS? RDBMS means Relational Database Management System. Relational Database Management System. Sir, what is RDBMS? It's very simple. If you store data in the form of tables, okay, in a particular database, then that particular database is called RDBMS. So what? Any database software stores data in the form of tables, then that database software is called, then that is called as what? Then that is called as RDBMS. Okay, then that particular database is called as RDBMS. It's very simple. If any database software stores data in the form of tables, then simply it is called as RDBMS. Here one question is generated in our brain. Sir, what is table? Okay, it's very simple. You people know about table. Table means collection of rows and columns. Okay, for better understanding purpose, I will explain this entire concept with the diagram. Okay, right. I am going to explain this particular concept with the diagram. Listen here. Database is programmatically represented with database is diagrammatically represented with this symbol. Okay, with this symbol. Suppose this is a database software. This is a database software. Okay, this is a database software. Listen here. Now I want to store student data. Now what is my requirement? Now I want to store whose data? Student data. The database software. Student data. First of all, you need to identify which details you want to store. Student contains lot of details like student number, student name, student address, age, gender, branch, father name, mother name, email ID, and so on, etc. Okay, there are so many details about student. So first of all, you will decide which details you want to store in database software. It depends upon your requirement. Okay, if you are able to store at least two details, then you are able to store any number of details. Okay, that's why in my example I want to store the details like as student number, student name, and student address in the database. Okay, for that, first of all, I am going to create a table. Okay, first of all, I am going to create a table with the name student. You can give any name for the table, but it should be meaningful. Okay, so here I am going to create a table with the name student. In that table, I need to create three columns. Sir, why you are creating three columns? Because I want to store three details. Okay, the number of columns to be created in a table depends on number of details you want to store in that particular table. Okay, so now I am creating how many columns? 3 columns. Like the first column name is SNO, it means student number, and the second column name is SName. SName means student name, and the third column name is SADD, means student address. So I will create 3 columns like this. Okay, first column, second column, and third column. Okay, so suppose I want to store student number, student name, student address, and mobile number also. Then how many columns? How many columns we need to create? Come on, respond. Anyone? How many columns we need to create? Don't think how to create columns. I will explain. Okay. Anyone respond? How many columns you need to create? Suppose, listen carefully. I want to store student number, student name, student address, mobile number also. Okay, I want to store student number, student name, student address, mobile number also. Then how many columns I need to create? Now respond. 4 columns. Very good, yours. Shreyas, is it clear? Is it clear? So the number of columns to be created depends on the number of details you are going to store in the table. Once again, I am repeating last time. Number of columns to be created depends on the number of details you want to store in that particular table. Okay, Shreyas, is it clear? Respond. Say yes or no. Right. Okay, fine. So now I am going to store data like this. Triple one, triple A, common, triple one, triple A, common. Okay. Next, triple one, triple A, common, and 112, 112, triple B, Hyderabad, Hyderabad. Just a minute. Hyderabad. 113, triple C, some Hyderabad. Okay, like this I am going to store data. Listen here. Here student is a table. It contains three columns. These three are called SNO, SNAME, SADD. These three are called columns. Okay, columns. And the data that is stored inside the table. This is one row. This is another row. This is another row. Okay, how many rows here we are having? 3 rows. These three are called rows. Okay, these three are called what? Rows. Rows. Here the data is stored in the form of rows and columns or not. So that's why this particular database is called RDBMS, Relational Database Management System, because it stores data. Okay, here column names. What are the column names? Here the column names here: SNO, SNAME, and the SADD. SADD. Okay. Listen here. Columns are also called fields. Columns are also called what? Fields. Fields are attributes. Fields are attributes. Okay. Columns represents, fields are attributes of the table. So rows means records. Rows means records. Rows are also called records, which represents the data that is stored in the table. Records means data stored in the table. Okay. In this way, we are going to store our data inside the RDBMS table. Okay. So, so I hope you're perfectly clear about this. Database is nothing but a software which is used to store our data in computer hard disk permanently and also allows us to perform operations on the data. Okay. RDBMS means it is also a database which stores data in the form of table. Okay. Listen here. There are so many number of RDBMS database softwares. Okay. Supplied by different software companies. Example: Oracle, Oracle, MySQL, Sybase, SQL Server, DB2, and so on, etc. All these are the RDBMS database softwares which stores data in the form of tables. Listen here, if you want to store your data in computer hard disk permanently, you need database software. You can use any one of these database softwares. These are the alternatives. Oracle is alternative for MySQL, Sybase, SQL Server, DB2 and so on, etc. MySQL is alternative for Oracle, Sybase, SQL Server, DB2 and so on, etc. For example, CSC, ECE, Triple E. What are these? CSC, ECE, Triple E are the branches present in BTech. Suppose any particular person wants to study BTech, he can join in 3 branches. CSC, ECE, Triple E? No. He can choose any one of the branch in order to complete his BTech. Am I right? So CSC is the alternative for EC and Triple E. EC is alternative for Triple E and CSC, like this. Here also there are so many number of RDBMS database softwares. You can use your favorite RDBMS database software in order to store your data in computer hard disk in order to perform operations on the data. Okay, is it clear? Is it clear up to now? Respond. So you can install all RDBMS softwares, or you can install any one RDBMS database software in order to store your data. Respond. Is it clear perfectly up to now? All these are the alternatives. Okay, you can choose any one, depends upon your requirement. Okay, right. Okay, fine. Now I am going more deeper. Listen carefully. Listen carefully. Listen here. Listen here. There is a database software. There is a database software. There is a database software. Here I have a database software or RDBMS database software, whatever it may be. Database software. Okay, sir, this is which database software? This may be Oracle or MySQL or Sybase, whatever it may be. It can be any database software. Suppose here there is a user. Here is a user. Okay, here we have one user. Who stores data in the database software? Is it God? No. God never stores data inside the database software. Who stores data inside the database software? User stores data inside the database software. Okay. User stores data inside the database software. User wants to access or retrieve data, he can. User can retrieve the data from the database software. Okay. User can retrieve the data from the database software. If user wants, he can update the data that is stored in the database software. If the user wants, he can delete the data from the database software. So all these are the various operations performed by the user on the data that is stored in database software. Okay, user can store the data in the database software, user can retrieve the data from the database software, user can update the data that is stored in database software, user can delete the data that is stored in database software. So everything is performed by the user. In order to perform all these things, there must be interaction or communication between user and database software. Okay, there must be what? Communication or interaction between user and database software. So as you people know, in order to provide communication or interaction, you must need one language. Okay, Here that language name is SQL. What is the language name? SQL. Sir, what is SQL? Just like C language, C++ language, Java language, just like SQL is also a language. SQL is also a language which provides communication or interaction between user and any database software like Oracle, MySQL, and so on, etc. Okay, right. So SQL means structured query language. Structured structured query language. Structured query language. Okay. So what is SQL? SQL is a SQL is a language. SQL is a language which provides the use of SQL, which provides communication between user and any database software. Any database software like Oracle, MySQL, Sybase, and so on, etc. Okay, by using SQL you can interact with any database software. Okay, suppose a Telugu, if you want to communicate with a Telugu person, you must know Telugu language. If you want to communicate with Tamil person, you must know Tamil language. In the similar manner, if you want to communicate with the database software, you must know SQL language. Okay, if you are not knowing Tamil, it is not possible to interact with Tamil person. If you are not able to understand SQL, it is not you are not able to interact with what database software. Okay, that is the need of learning SQL. By using by using by using SQL, you can interact with any database software. You can interact with any database software like any database software like Oracle, MySQL, Sybase, and so on, etc. Okay, right. But the syntax of SQL language may changes little bit. Okay, to interact with listen here, if you know SQL, you can interact with Oracle, and you can store data inside the Oracle, and you will perform operations on Oracle database software. If you know SQL, you can interact with MySQL in order to store your data in MySQL and in order to process the data in MySQL. Okay, so there is no separate SQL for Oracle, there is no separate SQL for MySQL, there is no separate SQL for Sybase, and so on, etc. There is only one SQL. By using that SQL, you can interact with any database software. But the syntaxes of SQL language, the syntaxes of SQL language may changes little bit. Okay, may changes, not huge, little bit based on the database software we used. Database software we used. Okay, based on the database software we used. Listen here. In interview room, suppose interviewer asks the question, what is the difference between Oracle and SQL? Okay, so many people confused about this difference. A lot of people thought like this: SQL and MySQL both are same. Why? Because MySQL also contains SQL. No, it is absolutely wrong. Okay, MySQL is different from SQL. Okay, there is no Mysore in Mysore Bonda. Okay, in the similar manner, MySQL is different from SQL. Sir, what is the difference between Oracle and SQL? What is the difference between MySQL and SQL? First of all, I am going to tell difference between Oracle and MySQL. Sorry, Oracle and SQL. Then you people able to understand the difference between MySQL and SQL. Listen here. Oracle is not a that Oracle is not a language. Okay, observe. Oracle is not a language. Oracle is a RDBMS database software. Okay, but SQL is a language. If you know SQL language, then you are able to interact with Oracle database software, and you are able to store your data in Oracle database software. Okay, that is the difference. Now tell me the difference between MySQL and SQL. MySQL is not a language. MySQL is a database software. SQL is a language. If you know SQL language, then you can store your data in MySQL database software. You can perform operations on the data stored in MySQL database software. I hope you people understand very clearly difference between Oracle and SQL, MySQL and SQL. Okay. So SQL is language, Oracle, MySQL and so on, etc. They are the database softwares. Okay, fine. Now listen very carefully. Listen very carefully. Now I am going to tell key point. Key point in SQL language. Okay. If you know the key point and you put that key point in the implementation, then learning and working with SQL is not a matter. It's very simple. Sir, what is that key point? SQL contains all queries. SQL contains what? SQL contains queries or commands. SQL is with full of queries. Okay, SQL contains queries or commands. Commands. SQL contains queries or commands. Each and every query contains some specific purpose. Each and every query contains some specific use. Some specific use. Okay. If you know use of that particular query, if you know the use of that particular query of that query and how to use that query, then you will happily use that query in order to fulfill your requirement. Use that query in order to fulfill your requirement. So this is the key point in SQL. Okay, what is the key point? SQL contains queries or commands. Each and every query contains some specific use or some specific purpose. If you know use of that particular query and how to use that query, then you can happily use that query in order to fulfill your desired requirement. Okay. With SQL, what you can do? SQL can create a table. SQL can create table. SQL can store data in the table. SQL can retrieve data from the table. SQL can update or modify data from the table in the table. SQL can delete the data in the table. Okay. SQL can create the table. SQL can store the data in the table, retrieve the data from the table, update or modify the data in the table, delete the data in the table. Sir, to create a table using SQL, we need one query. That query name is create. What is the query name? Create. To store data into the table, we need one query. That query name is insert. To retrieve data from the table, we need one query. That query name is select. To update data in the table, we need one query. That query name is update. Update. So to delete data from the table, we need one query. That query name is delete. Sir, here, what is create, what is insert, what is select, what is update, what is delete? All these are the queries. Okay, create is a query, insert is a query, select is a query, the update is a query, delete is a query. If you know, the purpose of create query and how to use that particular create query, then you can happily use that create query in order to create table. Okay, if you know how to use insert query, then you are able to store data in the table. Okay, so here the conclusion is what? Learning SQL is nothing but learning queries. Working with SQL is nothing but working or writing or preparing queries. What is the need of preparing queries? To perform operations on the database. Okay, here what is the conclusion? Learning SQL. Learning SQL is nothing but learning queries. Learning queries. Working with SQL is nothing but working with SQL. SQL means writing or preparing queries. What is the need of writing queries? To perform operations on the data of database software. Operations on the database software. Okay, so that's it. This is the brief introduction about SQL language. Listen here. Now I will clarify the doubts. First one is here. The first one is what? So there is no query language support for files. Suppose if you are storing data inside the files, there is no separate language like SQL to perform operations on the data of files. But if you store your data inside the database software, then there is a language. What is that language? SQL. Okay, so the difference between file and database is file stores data, database also stores data. What is the difference here? There is no query language support like SQL language support for files, but SQL language support is there for database software. And another one is the operations that are performed. The operations that are performed on database are called CRUD operations. CRUD operations means C means create. Okay, you can create table inside the database. Okay, U means update. R means retrieve. D means delete. Okay, so I hope you people understand very clearly. Okay, so if any, here the conclusion is, if anyone wants to store his data inside the database software and wants to perform operations on the data, he must know which language? SQL language. SQL language. Without SQL language, it is not possible to store data inside the database software. It is not possible to perform operations on the data that is stored in SQL language. So here, once again, I am repeating the conclusion. Okay. So key point, that is what? SQL is nothing but collection of queries or commands. Okay, each and every query contains some specific use. If you know use of that particular query, and if you know how to use that query, means syntax of that query, then you can happily use that query to fulfill your requirement. Okay, so this is the brief idea about what is SQL and what you can do with SQL. Okay, in this course, I will teach you how to interact with MySQL database software using SQL language. Okay, MySQL database software using SQL language. For that, I will show you how to install MySQL database software and how to open or launch MySQL database software and how to write queries using SQL to manipulate or perform operations on the MySQL database software. Okay, I will show you everything practically. Okay, each and every point practically, hands off session. So don't worry about SQL, just do the practice after the class. That's it. Thank you. So any doubts? Is it perfectly clear? So if you have any doubts, ask me. So overall view, computer contains two memory, RAM, temporary, permanent. Okay, temporary. If you store your data in temporary memory, it will not be used in future. If you store your data in permanent memory, it will be stored in it will be used in future also. Okay, variable means memory location, file also memory location. Okay, variables are created in RAM, so they are the temporary memory locations. If you store your data in variables, then those data will be lost after your program execution finished. Okay, if you store your data inside the files are created in hard disk, so you can use that data in future also. But there are some limitations with files. I already explained you people. Large amount of data cannot be stored. Okay. No query language support. Merging two files data is difficult. Searching required data and retrieving data, specific data is difficult. For that, we have a solution, that is database. Database is nothing but a software which stores our data in computer hard disk permanently. Okay, permanently. So and also allows us to perform operations on the data. Okay, if you want to perform operations on the data, that those operations are called CURD operations. If you store data inside the database in the form of tables, then that is called RDBMS. There are so many number of RDBMSs like Oracle, MySQL, Sybase, and so on, etc. Okay, to you, if the user wants to interact with any database software, they there must be communication between user and database software. For that, we need one language, that is nothing but SQL. Okay, if you know SQL language, then you can write the queries and you can store data in the database software, and you are able to perform operations on the data of database software. Okay, is it perfectly clear, crystal clear? Respond in the chat box. Respond. Anju Babu and Shreyas. Any small doubt, ask me, not a issue. If you have any small queries, means small questions or doubts, ask me, not a issue. Everything is clear? Yuvaraj, Razu, Shreyas, Anju Babu. Listen here, I will give you a contact number. Whoever is interested to join, okay? That contact number is 99 125 20841. Okay, 99 125 20841. This is the contact number. Okay, I will show you everything practically. Okay, right. May I leave the session? Any doubts? 7 to 8, Anju Babu. Okay, fine. May I leave the session?